picture this. It's a December night back in 1995. Christmas is right around the corner. And in a small town in Texas, a young woman, Adrianne Jones, gets a call from someone she knows named David Graham. He says he wants to talk to clear the air about something,
Yeah.
But Adrianne doesn't know that this seemingly harmless request is going to seal her fate.
Oh, wow.
Because hidden in the shadows is David's girlfriend, Diane Zamora, consumed by a jealous rage that's about to erupt into a night of unimaginable violence.
Oh, my.
This is a story about love, betrayal, and the chilling consequences of obsession. Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Crime series.
This case, the murder of Adrianne Jones, it captivated the nation, not just because of how brutal the crime was, but because the people who did it, Diane Zamora and David Graham, they seemed so utterly normal.
Yeah.
They were high school sweethearts, ambitious-driven, they had their whole lives ahead of them.
It's almost impossible to think of these teenagers as a golden couple and then to think about how brutal their crime was.
Right.
So let's try to understand who they were before that fateful night.
Okay, so Diane Zamora, she was known for being really focused and ambitious. She had her sights set on the U.S. Naval Academy, and she pursued that goal with this unwavering determination.
Wow.
Some people described her as a perfectionist, someone who just strived for excellence in every part of her life.
Okay, and David, what about him?
David. He was the charming, popular one, a natural leader, good at academics and athletics. He was a cadet at the very prestigious Air Force Academy, and it seemed like he was on track for a really bright future.
Wow.
They were, as you said, the epitome of the golden couple.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, this case really reminds us that appearances can be incredibly deceiving. Behind all that success and normalcy, there were cracks in their relationship, vulnerabilities that would ultimately lead them down a very dark path.
And it seems like the catalyst for all of this was David's infidelity, right?
Right.
He confessed to Diane about a one-time encounter with Adrianne Jones.
Right.
It's hard to believe that one act of infidelity could trigger such a horrific chain of events.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost impossible to understand. But we have to think about how intense teenage relationships can be, the often unrealistic expectations, and all those powerful emotions that come with first love, betrayal and jealousy.
I was really struck by the detail that David only confessed because Adrianne told him she might be pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Do we know if that was true? Or was she maybe trying to manipulate him?
Unfortunately, we may never know for sure. But whether it was true or not, it definitely added another layer of complexity to the situation.
Right.
For Diane, this wasn't just a betrayal of their love, but a potential threat to their carefully constructed future.
Yeah.
The thought of David potentially having a child with another woman probably made her feelings of insecurity and rage even stronger.
And so instead of facing those feelings,
Yeah.
Seeking help or even ending the relationship,
Yeah.
they made a pact, this chilling decision that would seal Adrianne's fate. They decided to kill her.
It's so hard to understand that kind of thinking. But this is where the idea of folie à deux comes in, or shared delusion. It's possible that their intense codependent relationship created this distorted reality where murder seemed like the only solution.
So they convinced themselves that taking a life was the only way to prove David's loyalty and save their future. Did they just snap, or was there a plan?
There was definitely planning involved. They tricked Adrianne into meeting them at a remote location by saying they needed to talk back. Diane hid in the car while David drove Adrianne to a secluded field.
Wow.
The level of premeditation is chilling. This wasn't a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. This was calculated, cold-blooded murder.
And then on that December night, they carried out their plan. Can we talk about what happened, how Adrianne died? I know it's a difficult topic, but I think it's important to acknowledge how brutal their actions were.
You're right. It's essential to remember that Adrianne Jones was a real person, a young woman with hopes and dreams, and her life was stolen in the most horrific way imaginable.
And it's hard to grasp that after committing such a horrific act, they just went on with their lives as if nothing had happened.
Right. They went to holiday parties, they continued with their studies, they maintained this facade of normalcy.
Yeah.
It shows a level of detachment, a psychological disconnect that is both fascinating and terrifying.
But as we know, secrets have a way of coming out, especially when they're as heavy as murder.
Yeah.
What happened that brought this case to light after almost a year of silence?
Well, sometimes it's the smallest detail, the seemingly insignificant crack in the facade that unravels a carefully constructed lie. And in this case, it was Diane herself who inadvertently set the wheels of justice in motion.
Wait, she confessed, after all that meticulous planning and effort to cover their tracks.
She did. Maybe the weight of the secret became too much to bear. Maybe she felt a little bit of remorse, or maybe it was a subconscious desire to get caught. Whatever the reason, Diane, now a freshman at the Naval Academy, she told her roommates about the murder.
Imagine being one of those roommates and hearing this confession late at night. It would be like a bomb dropped into their world of, ambition and achievement.
Yeah, I can't even imagine it. Did they believe her? What did they do?
Well, one of Diane's roommates was just totally shaken by what she heard, and she decided to do the right thing.
Wow.
She reported Diane to the authorities. It was a decision that took a lot of courage, and it ultimately led to the case being reopened.
That's incredible. So one small act of bravery, of speaking truth to power, broke this case wide open.
Absolutely. It really shows how our choices have a ripple effect. You know how even when things are really dark, a tiny spark of conscience can lead to justice.
And what about David? What happened when the authorities started looking into him?
At first, he crumbled under the pressure of the interrogation, and he confessed to being involved in the murder.
And his confession actually matched up with details that Diane had already revealed, which made the case against them even stronger.
So it seemed like a pretty straightforward case, right? Two confessions corroborating evidence. It sounds like justice for Adrianne was finally within reach.
Well, things took an unexpected turn when David later took back his confession.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he claimed that he had acted under duress from Diane. He said that she was the mastermind, the one who manipulated him into it,
Wow.
and that he only participated out of fear and because he loved her in this, messed up way.
So was he a willing accomplice drawn into this by his own jealousy and loyalty? Or was he a victim manipulated by a controlling girlfriend?
That became the big question during their trials. The prosecution argued that they were both equally responsible, and they presented evidence of their shared planning and how they showed no remorse after the murder.
And what about the defense? What did they do?
Both defense teams really fought hard, trying to shift the blame and make their clients seem less guilty. Diane's lawyers argued that she was young and impressionable and under the influence of her manipulative boyfriend.
Right.
They painted this picture of David as the one who started it all, the one who had the affair and ultimately planned the murder.
So the courtroom became this battleground with these two competing stories.
Exactly. The jury had to sort through all the evidence, weigh the different testimonies, and decide who was telling the truth and how much each of them was responsible for Adrianne's death. It was a complicated and emotional trial that really captured the nation's attention.
And what was the verdict? Did the jury believe David's claims that he was forced into it?
Ultimately, the jury found both Diane Zamora and David Graham guilty of capital murder.
Wow.
Even though they tried to blame each other and downplay their roles, they were both held accountable for what they did.
So even with those different stories, the jury saw them as partners in crime.
Yeah, their planning and their cold behavior after the murder were just too much to ignore. They were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Two young lives full of potential, forever linked by this horrible act. It's a stark reminder of what can happen when jealousy goes unchecked and how fragile life really is.
It's also a reminder that justice, even if it takes time, can prevail. And it's all thanks to that one person who had the courage to speak up. Adrianne's story was heard, and her murderers were held responsible for their actions.
It really makes you think about the weight of secrets, the burden of guilt, and how important it is to speak up, even when it's hard. It's clear that this case goes way beyond the headlines. It makes us confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature and the dark potential that can hide even in seemingly ordinary relationships.
You're absolutely right. The case really shows us how thin the line can be between love and obsession, between passion and violence. It makes us think about the pressures in our society that contribute to these kinds of tragedies, the unrealistic expectations we put on young people, and how important it is to build healthy relationships based on trust and respect.
What can we learn from this tragedy? How can we prevent something like this from happening again? What can we do to make sure another young life isn't cut short because of jealousy and rage?
This case really highlights how important open communication is, especially when it comes to tough emotions like jealousy and insecurity.
Right.
We need to create a space where young people feel like they can talk about these things, where they feel comfortable being vulnerable and seeking help when they need it, and knowing that they're not the only ones going through this.
Yeah, it's about building healthy relationships
Yeah.
right from the beginning, teaching young people about boundaries and respect and how to spot those red flags,
Exactly.
both in their own relationships and the relationships of people around them.
Yeah, and we have to give young people the tools to navigate these complex relationships, to see those unhealthy patterns and understand that violence is never the answer.
Right.
There are always other ways to handle things. There are resources, people who care, and paths to healing.
This case also shows just how much these crimes impact the victims and their families. Adrianne Jones was a young woman full of life, and she had her whole future ahead of her,
Right.
and her dreams were shattered, her potential completely taken away by this senseless act of violence. We can't forget that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so important to remember that behind the headlines, the court cases, and the psychology, there are real people whose lives have been completely changed.
Yeah.
Adrianne's family and friends are still grieving her loss, and the effects of this tragedy will continue to be felt for a long time.
It's a serious reminder that actions have consequences, and that even people who seem ordinary can do incredibly cruel things.
And it reinforces how important it is to intervene early on. If you see something, say something. If you're worried about a friend, a family member, even a stranger, don't wait to reach out for help. It could make a world of difference.
I think what really sticks with me is that this could have been prevented. If only Diane and David had talked to someone, gone to counseling, or found a healthy way to deal with their emotions. If only someone had seen the warning signs and stepped in.
You're right. It's a tragedy on so many levels. But it also serves as this powerful call to action, a reminder that we all have a part to play in making the world a safer and more compassionate place.
It starts with being aware, educating ourselves, and having open conversations.
Yes.
We need to stop romanticizing those toxic relationships and promote healthy communication and conflict resolution skills.
And we have to prioritize mental health support for young people,
Yeah.
making counseling accessible and creating those safe spaces where they can talk about their struggles without judgment. That can truly save lives.
The case of Diane Zamora and David Graham is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide beneath the surface of lives that seem perfect.
Yeah.
But it's also a chance for us to grow, to learn from what happened, and work towards a future where these kinds of tragedies are less likely to happen.
Adrianne Jones deserved so much more. Her memory should inspire us to create a world where love doesn't become obsession, where jealousy doesn't turn into violence, and where we cherish and protect young lives.
Thank you for joining us on this difficult but important journey into this twisted love triangle. We hope this deep dive helped you understand the complexities of human behavior, the devastating consequences of letting emotions run wild, and the crucial need for prevention and intervention.
And as always, if you or someone you know is struggling with an unhealthy relationship or having thoughts of violence, please reach out for help. There are resources available, people who care, and a path towards healing.
Don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle for more deep dives into the world of true crime. And check out our YouTube channel for extra content and behind-the-scenes looks. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always, stay vigilant.